There is a kind of person you come across once in a while who seems different, not louder, not more talented, not luckier, but someone whose presence feels like movement. You feel it before you even notice it. These are the people who grow fast, so fast it confuses everyone around them, so fast it makes others uncomfortable, so fast they are labeled as arrogant, intense, or too much. But if you look closer, what you are actually seeing is someone who has stopped playing by the unspoken rules. The rules of staying small, the rules of waiting your turn, the rules of never shining too bright in case it makes others feel dim. See, most people grow only when life forces them to, when they hit rock bottom, when they lose everything, when they get so fed up with their own reflection that they have no choice but to rise. But the 1%, they grow by choice. They grow by design. They do not wait for permission or rock bottom or tragedy. They start with a quiet decision. I refuse to be like everyone else. That decision is dangerous, not to them, but to the fragile egos around them. Because when you rise faster than what people are used to, you disturb their comfort. You reflect back to them everything they are not doing. And for many, that is unbearable. So they will call you lucky. They will say you changed. They will say you are obsessed. They will warn others not to be like you. But here is the truth. People are not afraid of your success. They are afraid of what your growth says about their excuses. The 1% are not superhuman. They simply learned how to obey a different voice. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of laziness, not the voice of peer pressure, but the voice inside that said, "You are made for more. Keep going." They started doing what others avoid. They showed up when it was boring. They stayed disciplined when no one was watching. They learned to let go of people who only knew the old version of them. And that is where the separation begins. Because at first, your growth will be quiet. People will not notice the gym sessions, the journaling, the late nights, the early mornings. They will not understand why you are reading instead of scrolling, why you are saving instead of spending, why you are dreaming instead of complaining. But then it hits. Suddenly, you are talking different, walking different, thinking different. Your energy is heavier, not with burden, but with direction. And that is when people start to stare. They stare because your growth feels fast, but they do not realize it was slow in the beginning. It was hidden in the hours you spent rebuilding your mind. It was tucked into the decisions no one clapped for. Fast growth is never sudden. It only looks sudden to those who are not paying attention. The truth is, the 1% have been in the dark for a long time, failing, rebuilding, isolating, sacrificing, and choosing again and again to bet on themselves. They were ridiculed. They were doubted. They were talked about in rooms they would never step into. But they kept going, not for applause, not to prove anyone wrong, but because something in them refused to die quietly. Growth this deep is not a strategy. It is a shift in identity. It is becoming unrecognizable to the version of you who once settled. And the 1%, they do not want to fit in. They want to evolve. Even if that means walking alone, even if that means being misunderstood, because they know those who outgrow the world are often exiled by it before they are admired by it. You will notice something strange when you begin to grow. The world does not applaud you. Not at first. In fact, the world resists you. It whispers lies disguised as warnings. Do not lose yourself. You are changing too fast. Are you sure this is healthy? And if you're not careful, you start to believe them. Because when you evolve quickly, you start to question your own sanity. You wonder if maybe you're moving too fast, reaching too high, dreaming too far. But that doubt, it does not come from your soul. It comes from your conditioning. See, most of us were taught to live in balance, to stay realistic, to avoid extremes. And what is faster growth than an extreme shift away from the average? The average person sleeps through life. And anyone who chooses to wake up will always seem dangerous to the dreamers. That is why fast growth feels lonely. It is not just that people leave. It is that you begin to see how little most people actually want change. They want comfort, not clarity. They want validation, not vision. They want belonging, not becoming. So when you stop laughing at what is no longer funny, when you stop arguing in circles, when you stop trying to prove your worth, you become a mirror, and people start avoiding their own reflection. You will find friends turning distant, mentors turning quiet, supporters turning critics, because your growth triggers their stagnation. But let me tell you something important. You are not wrong for moving fast. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not toxic for walking away. You are simply answering a call they were too afraid to pick up. Every level you rise to requires shedding the skin of your former self. And sometimes that skin looks like people you loved. It looks like habits you enjoyed. It looks like a life that once made sense, but now feels too small. And it hurts. Not because you're lost, but because you're finally found, and not everyone is coming with you. That pain, that is the price of growth. It is the grief of outgrowing what no longer nourishes you. But the 1%, they do not run from that grief. They lean into it. They let it sharpen them. They let it carve away their old selves until what remains is real, raw, and ready. They understand that fast growth does not mean skipping steps. It means refusing to stay stuck on steps you have already mastered. There will be days where you feel like an outsider in your own life, when conversations bore you, when entertainment numbs you, when comfort makes you feel trapped instead of safe. That is how you know you are no longer who you were, and even though it is isolating, it is also proof that you are evolving. You see, the 1% are not addicted to speed, they are devoted to alignment. And when you align, truly, things start moving fast. Because the universe is not responding to your hustle, it is responding to your clarity. That is why you hear them say, once I decided, everything started falling into place. It is not magic, it is alignment. It is the end of inner conflict. It is what happens when your values, actions, and identity all move in the same direction. But getting there, it costs everything that is fake, everything that is borrowed, everything that is no longer you. And that is what scares people the most. Because to grow fast, you must first become empty. Empty of distractions, empty of noise, empty of illusions. And in that silence, most people quit. But the 1% stay. They stay long enough to remember who they really are. They sit with the fear. They wrestle with their demons. They let go of shortcuts. And they finally do the thing no one else wants to do. They take full responsibility. That is the difference. That is the gap between the average and the awakened. One waits for change. The other becomes it. There is a moment that changes everything. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not come with applause. It is quiet, painfully quiet. You are sitting in your room, Alone. No noise, no distractions. Just you and the realization, no one is coming to save me. At first, it feels like despair, but stay with it. Sit still. Because if you do, if you resist the urge to scroll, to call someone, to numb the discomfort, you will feel something else rise from within. Power. That is the birthplace of the 1%. Not in privilege or talent or luck, but in that moment when they stop outsourcing their power and take it back. They stop blaming their parents. They stop blaming the system. They stop blaming time or money or God. They say, "This is my life, and I am responsible for what I do with it." Most people never get there. They live their entire lives in reaction, always waiting, always hoping, trapped in a maze of maybe someday. But the 1%, they do not wait. They build. They build discipline, not because they are motivated, but because they are tired of being owned by their emotions. They build solitude, not because they hate people, but because they value clarity more than noise. They build character, because they understand that results built without integrity will always collapse. You see, true growth, the kind that terrifies others. It is not about doing more. It is about becoming more. Becoming the kind of person who keeps promises to themselves, who does the hard thing, not because anyone is watching, but because they said they would, who shows up without applause, who keeps going after the novelty wears off, who walks into uncertainty without needing a guarantee. That is what separates the fast growers from the rest. Most people start with fire and quit with excuses. But the 1%, they know that the fire always fades, and what remains is choice. Every day, every hour, every breath, a choice to show up anyway. They do not need motivation. They are moved by meaning. They are not chasing dopamine. They are anchored in direction. And when you watch someone like that, really watch them, you start to realize why their growth feels like a threat to everyone else. Because it reminds you that your excuses are lies, that your limitations are learned, that your pace is self-imposed, that your stuckness is a story. And it is not meant to shame you. It is meant to wake you, to ask, what are you waiting for? You are not confused. You are just avoiding responsibility. You are not too late. You are just delaying action. You are not lost. You are just afraid to start. The clock is ticking, and no one is coming. That is the truth. And in that truth, you will either find your weakness or your will. The 1% choose the will. They sacrifice comfort for conviction, approval for authenticity, popularity for purpose. They die to who they were, again and again, until what remains is untouchable. And that is why they grow so fast. Because when you stop trying to be liked by everyone, you are finally free to become yourself. When you stop waiting for the perfect moment, you realize the perfect moment was always now. And when you stop chasing identity in things, you discover that you are always the source. So let the world misunderstand you. Let them say you are moving too fast. Let them say you are changing. Let them say you are different, because they are right. You are not who you were. And that is exactly the point. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to rise. And when you finally stop holding yourself back, you will. Faster than they can explain. Stronger than they can deny. Deeper than they can understand. Because growth is not linear, it is exponential. When you are willing to let go of everything that slows you down. And in that moment, you will understand why so few ever make it. Not because they could not, but because they would not. But you You are not like them. You are the reason the 1% exists. Now go prove it.